Welcome, Troy Love.
Good morning.
August already.
I
So,
know. We're
yeah,
almost September. We have,
I know. Labor Day is around the corner. So,
you doing anything fun for that?
not for Labor Day. We had a family member. My mother-in-law passed away. So in September, we're going to the memorial in Michigan. So we will be in cooler weather for that. And so yes. So, but I mean, it was a blessing at this point. So but but interestingly, just as I was getting on this, the reminder of her birthday popped up.
Oh,
Because it would be her birthday. She would have been 96. She was short a month of that.
oh,
So I was just like, oh, there's those little pangs of like, I'm incredibly grateful that she was part of my life. She treated me, amazingly well, no bad MIL stuff, So
yeah.
I'm grateful. And I love her son to pieces. So she did a great job with him. So
Oh, good.
but so there's a long answer. Do you have plans camping or something for Labor Day?
No, I mean, I am camped out. I mean, my son is in scouts, Boy Scouts, and we like go camping like at least once a month. But for the next 2 months, I'm teaching at Arizona State University in their social work program on Saturdays. So
Sounds like a great reason to not
it is
camp.
a good
So,
reason. Totally good.
yeah.
So
So, I know because I participated in your Finding Peace in-person retreat that you are amazing at attachment wounds. Oh, we've got a question. So
thank you.
we'll start with the questions because otherwise oh, here we go. Addict betrayer here. How do I uncover past traumas and wounds when I have very few fuzzy memories of my childhood? I constantly feel like I'm guessing what could make sense instead of being confident that this applies to me. Where do I start? Great question. Thank you.
I'm curious about your thoughts about that.
Well, I I've been in recovery for decades, and the puzzle pieces come together. Like I've been in recovery. I didn't have to know. I didn't have to have, clear memories. That abandonment wound, like I eventually, just a few years ago, could tie some things back. And there was not like a single incident where that, came from. It was a kind of a series of, like we talk about little T traumas versus big T traumas. So I have a feeling mine are more some little T traumas, that added up. And guess what? The why is really interesting and useful at some point. But to me, like I've been in recovery, I didn't have to know and I didn't have to address those. And for many people, my experience is that they go off trying to address all those, wounds. And guess what? Those are why we did all that silly acting out. Silly, I don't mean to diminish it to partners either. But we chose a maladaptive coping mechanism that was hurtful to ourselves and everyone else. And so stopping the problematic behavior and then addressing those things. I think for my experiences, I think I was able to identify more as I had more capacity to do so, that it wasn't compromising my recovery. There was more clarity. I know for sure, I could not have handled, all of that understanding, early in the process. I'm 99.9% confident I would have been right back out, in the addiction acting out world. So that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you. So, when we're dealing with sex addiction stuff, there's often the full disclosure that the addict is working on. And so it is challenging and difficult when you can't remember things as you're trying to put things together. We've done a whole lot in our attempt to try and forget things. And so now all of a sudden we are trying to remember things. So there are a couple of things that can be done. These are not like a guarantee that you're going to remember things. But to start writing some things down, to write a story of a time when maybe you were rejected or abandoned or abused, and just start writing it down. When I start writing things down, my brain starts to hit into gear and I start to say, oh yeah, and then that happened and no that yeah, and that happened. So one of those is just getting a journal, a notebook, and just starting to write some things down. I would tell you that I was sexually abused as a kid by a neighbor, and I honestly have no recollection of that whatsoever. The only reason why I know is because my mother told me, and she it was just recently that she described. She always said it was a boy down the street or up the street. And so in my mind, I always had an idea of where that was. But then she started describing the room of the boy this time, or just a couple of months ago, and I totally knew where it happened. Um,
Mhm.
and because I can remember being in that room, but I still have no recollection of that whatsoever. And I can also see how my sexual curiosity shifted around that age time. So things that most boys maybe wouldn't have been even curious about or even had ideas about, I did. And so being able to say, okay, well, that happened, I don't have any recollection. I'm not sure that I want to know. Um, so I want to honor or at least validate that you might not be fully able to remember. So writing it down, if you have siblings that are around that time, you may want to talk to your siblings and say, "Hey, what do you remember?" When I talk to my brother, he reminds me of stories that I did not remember from his own experiences. And so, if you have siblings that are still around, you could ask them, "Hey, what do you remember about this?" So those are a couple of places to start. But just get a pen or a pencil. I would prefer that to like typing it, because there's something about your hand writing and your brain working that's different than when you're typing. And just try that and see what happens. Pick an event and write about it. So hopefully that's helpful.
So I've got two things. Like, I mean, I hear people that go, "Oh, I have no trauma." So, like, if you say journal about, trauma or rejection or whatever, how often do you run up against somebody going like, "Well, I don't have any of that." Like, it's so compartmentalized and it's so deep.
I have a ton of well, no, I've run into several people who tell me they have no wounds, and I'm like, well, that must be really nice. Um,
We can't relate. So,
Right.
yeah.
I say, even Jesus Christ had all six. So,
Mhm.
Son of God had six wounds. You don't have any? Wow. Amazing. Amazing. That usually jolts him a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
um, so and a lot of people are reluctant to talk about the wounds because they think that this is all about blaming their parents. They're afraid we're going to throw their parents under the bus or whoever, and that's not what it's about either. It's really about like, look, you things happen. We live in a world where bad things happen all the time. So things happened, and and let's talk about how that has affected us. The person says that he has fuzzy memories. I blocked out a lot of my childhood. I don't remember a ton of things. And the very few things that I do remember are not great. So my mom's always like, don't you remember any of the good things? And I'm like, no. But so it is it's part of what our brain does when we're traumatized to like compartmentalize things and put them in boxes so we don't have to deal with them. So knowing that, if you have a therapist who does EMDR, that might be another way to unlock some memories because we pick a traumatic event and then we do the bilateral stimulation, and then your brain starts picking up stuff and you may remember things that you didn't remember before. So, those are some suggestions.
Well, and you were talking about the writing, and it really is important to write. I've even heard people, like doing like a trauma egg and using their non-dominant hand, like
Mhm.
because like you can't be like thinking of like your brain can't get in the way, kind of thing.
Right. I like that.
Okay, so the next question is, let me get this. If somebody reacts angry and aggressive when confronted or triggered, what wounds can that be?
Any of them?
Yeah. So like, yeah.
So, so if you're the person who is reacting angrily and aggressively, then that would be a question that you may want to ask yourself. Um, Anger comes from a sense that something's being taken from you without your consent. So when we go into anger and aggressiveness, there's a sense that our safety oftentimes is being taken without our permission, or that there's something that's happening that's going to hurt me or take something away that I feel is really important to me. And so then I'm going to become defensive. I'm going to become angry about that. So it could be a rejection wound. Somebody's feeling like you're putting them down and they become angry about that because their sense of self is being taken. It could be abandonment. I remember way before I even had words for any of this stuff, and my partner would be gone. She was volunteering in a leadership position for a women's organization. She was gone every night. And this was long before I understood that I had an abandonment wound. I was angry. I was I was awful to live with. I look back, I'm like, man, that sucked for her and my kids. But I was angry, and the wound was I was feeling so alone. But once I was able to put words to it, then I was like, no, I'm not. I'm cool. I'm fine. And the anger went away. But until I understood that that wound was being poked, I didn't have the ability to deal with that. So it could be any of the wounds, but really it's what is the person sensing is being taken from them without their consent. And they then become rageful because they're trying to like control that and say, no, you can't do that. It's not okay.
Well, and for me, I learned that anger was the outward. I don't want to feel hurt. Like it's it's way nicer to have it be outward and big. You
It's a
know, like
protective
there's
thing.
yes, exactly. I can, I can push, like you said, control. I can push people away. I can do whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then it helps me sidestep the hurt of like, oh, this is happening, and I don't like it. I have learned, thank goodness, by doing my work, that like if I'm feeling angry, I need to quickly look at the hurt because otherwise I will be making amends to people and I would rather not. So for me, it's better to go quick look at what's hurting, identify that, do the work I need to do on the hurt, and then I can voice like I can say you know I'm hurt that this is happening or that that happened or whatever without having it be an attack, full on attack, outward. So but it would be interesting if you I suspect you might be the recipient of the anger, so if there's a way to in the moment even say or I honestly think it's much better to do this before or after, if you're able to say, your anger, comes across as big, I suspect there's something else going on underneath. Could we talk about that, or like when I see you, coming as out as angry, could we take a pause and take a moment to reflect what's really going on so that we can, otherwise nothing is going to change. It's always going to be that outward, self-protecting outward, and to get to the underlying stuff is really where the healing can happen. Okay, how does fantasy and intrigue connect with or show up maladaptive behavior to cope with pain trauma?
So we're gonna do a little bit of a I mean, this is a lot of education, right? Okay, so think about there's three groups of drugs that people often use. The first group of drugs is to try and help us relax, to try and help us calm down. So we call that satiation. So alcohol, marijuana, heroin, those kind of things, where it just kind of helps us relax. The second tries to help us be stimulated, to wake us up, to help us feel energized. So we got cocaine, got meth, some of the uppers like that. And then we have the drugs that want help us want to check out of reality. So we go into fantasy. And so you think about like uh, uh hmm, well, my brain just lost acid, the hallucinogens, mushrooms, those kind of things, right? So each one of those each one of those has their own purpose that people use them for, right? Well, we can do that. When you think about sex in particular, it has all three. So it has the fantasy, it has the stimulation, and it has the satiation as well. And so when we look at how fantasy and that curiosity connect to maladaptive behaviors, part of that is I'm unhappy with the reality that I'm living in. And so I'm going to fantasize about what it would be like to live in a different reality than the one that I'm living in. And then we tie that to our attachment wounds. Like if I have a rejection wound, then I firmly believe that I'm not enough and there's something seriously wrong with me, even though my partner's telling me that they think I'm wonderful and beautiful and all those things. I will go into fantasy to imagine, like, you know, that this beautiful person is just going to be all over me and it's going to just really want me because it's tied to that wound of rejection. And the challenge is that when I wake up from the fantasy, I realize that that's not real, and then it actually compounds the the wound of rejection. It makes me feel even worse because I'm like, well, that would never happen. Nobody would really want me like that. So then we go into more fantasy. So that's how they're connected. The way to counteract the fantasy, or the way to kind of meet that need, is to find ways to create things in your life. Um, like, this sounds dumb, but like, go get a Lego set and build something, like create something that you want, painting, art, a yard, doing yard work, creating something where you actually can fantasize and envision what that's going to look like, but you can actually create it. That's one of the ways to help deal with isn't the right word, but to channel that desire to live in a fantasy by actually creating something real and tangible that's beautiful.
That's fascinating. I mean, I was just thinking that, in our addiction, we don't spend a lot of time doing hobbies and interests and things like that. And an opportunity in recovery is to engage in things, um, uh, and and be creative. And I have to own that, like, for me, I have been far more creative when I'm not in
Yeah,
my active addiction. So
isn't that
that's
amazing?
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can actually show up for life. So
yeah.
okay. My essay husband struggles with abandonment wounds from his childhood, never knowing his father, and then neglect from his mother and other family. I feel like his addict abandons me by acting out, kind of getting ahead of me, abandoning him. Oh, I'm going to reread that because that's a really good sentence. I feel like his addict abandons me by acting out, kind of getting ahead of me, abandoning him. I'm going to abandon you first before you abandon me. We are 13 years in. How do I reassure him I'm committed? For context, we went through two back-to-back relapses after 10 months of sobriety. I feel like I'm being lumped in with others and you that used him and left him, and she indicates that they're in a therapeutic separation.
All right. So I love that you are wanting to show up for him and you want to reassure him that you're committed. There is no words that you will be able to say beautifully or articulately enough that's going to convince him that you're going to stick around. Because when you have an abandonment wound, speaking from experience, the core belief is that nobody will be there when I really need them. Now, um, that is a core belief that still pops up for me on a regular basis. And my best buddy Matt gets, and he's one of the guys that does this stuff. He gets so mad at me when I
I
say,
suspect he was talking about you on the webinar last
"Oh,
Friday
he
because he said,
probably
I have a
was."
really good friend. And I was like, somehow I think I can visualize
Uh-huh,
that
he
friend.
probably
So,
was. Yeah.
yeah.
He gets so mad at me when I start isolating He just really gets mad at me. And then I'm like, well, I just don't think you understand. And I just don't think, and he's like, what do you mean?
I don't want to bother you. Do you use
Yeah.
that language? Yep. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it was you.
Yeah. He's like, dude, we've been friends for like 10 years. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm like, I know this is my own stuff. It's not about you. So your husband hopefully has a therapist who can help him work through that in some way, EMDR or other ways of doing that. Because he has to learn that people do show up and people are there for them. So I love that you're asking, and you're having some boundaries which are really healthy. And the challenge with that is that somebody with attachment wounds, like, they get all upset about that and scared, but you need to keep your boundaries because it actually creates safety. So part of that is him doing some deeper dive. Part of the philosophy that I have is when we're doing recovery, the first step really is to try and help you start having some sobriety, right? We want you to get some sobriety under your belt. So you go to one of the classes that we have, the Sex Addiction 101, or if things are really bad, you go to an inpatient, like we have at Seeking Integrity, or you go to a some kind of thing where you get some sobriety under your belt, and that's
12
wonderful.
step, 90 meetings in 90
Yes,
days. Yes. There's
all
lots
those,
of paths. Yes.
right, all those ways. But for in my opinion, for lasting recovery to really be there, the whole reason why we were using these things was because of our trauma, and so we need to work through that. So it doesn't surprise me that he's had some relapses. I'm proud of him for having some sobriety, but that's what's going on. His fundamental core belief is that people won't show up for him when he really needs it. And so, yes, you are being lumped in, even though there's evidence to show that that's not the case. And when he's in his logical mind, he knows that's true. Like, he knows you're sticking around and all that stuff. But in his wounded self, that man. And so that's got to be so frustrating for you and Matt and all the other people who are like, come on, I've been with you for like 13 years already. So it's frustrating. Work with your therapist, talk to the other women, but know that this is his work. He's going to have to work through. So,
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say it sounds like your abandonment wound is showing up, is that correct? I, I refer often to Troy's work for attachment wounds and Dr. Eddie's for inner child. They work great together. And Dr. Eddie has a new book for betrayed partners coming out, which I had the opportunity to review. But when I'm reading the stories, and all of those things, you can see those things, coming out and identifying. I bring this up because he said, what is real versus what I feel. And what I hear is your husband's going to, I feel abandoned. I feel abandoned. Apparently Troy is way into that too. So it's like, and I get it too. I'm better at identifying this is what's happening, and I'm more able to come into that. But it's okay to go. What I think I'm seeing is your abandonment wound. Is that real? Like all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, that's my abandonment wound. Like, and now I can go. What do I need to do to take care of it? But having a plan about what do I need to do to take care of that. I did put in the chat. Troy just mentioned the work group. So we have a Sex Addiction 101 starting on Saturday. There is still room in that one. That will be Saturdays for the next 6 weeks, 90 minutes per week. A betrayed partner work group, healthy boundaries. What do you need to do to take care of yourself? Communication, etc. That starts on 9/4. Troy's next attachment wound group will start early November. That is also on that same link. And then there's more. Like, we have bunches of others. But like Troy said, start with Sex Addiction 101. If you're struggling to hold those boundaries, you'll have a 3-circle plan. There's 3 parts to Sex Addiction 101. There's the first 6 weeks, middle 6 weeks, and then a final 6 weeks. The guys that do that, I mean, it's consistent. They're connected with other people. There's accountability. It's good. It's not therapy or treatment. It's not enough, but it's a start. And then do the deeper work when when getting poked around attachment wounds, like, okay, I'm able to sustain my recovery, and now I'm willing to look at that because I've got this whole, network and support to lean back into as I'm identifying, oh yeah, I did have a, rejection wound. It's good information to have. So, um, okay, next question. Oops. I recently remembered a past slip that I hadn't disclosed. The thought of coming clean on it makes me feel like the world is going to end. I can't move forward without being completely honest, but the fear is overwhelming. I am going to disclose, but any advice, feedback, or encouragement would be great.
I thank you for being honest. Like, so we're dealing with shame here. And you have I'm gonna guess some shadows that are out. Number one is a politician, and then the second is the judge. So the politician is the one who says, "Don't tell anybody. Don't tell your spouse. Don't tell anybody because this is gonna be really bad. And if you do, then they're gonna walk out and they're gonna leave you. And they've already told you that this happens again. It's gonna be." So at normal, right? Your politician is trying to protect you from feeling rejected and abandoned and neglected and all those things. The challenge is that you can't have a healthy relationship without honesty, and you've already identified that you don't feel good. Like, you know that you don't feel good, and you're not living in integrity. So there's a book called Worthy of Her Trust. And the mantra that the guy, Jason, somebody, I never say his last name right. The mantra he says in there is, "I'd rather lose you than lie to you." And that's the mantra. Like, I'd rather lose you than not be a man of integrity. And that's a mantra that's really, really hard to kind of wrap your head around, I think, because the fear is, no, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose you. You've probably heard, if you've been hanging out with some of these things, the number of wives and husbands who are betrayed partners who say, "I can handle the truth. I can handle the truth. Don't lie to me. I can handle that you slipped. I can handle that you struggled. I can handle those things. I cannot handle being lied to." So part of this is recognizing that your fear is normal, um, and to understand that if you really value this relationship, then honesty is what you have to do. Now, sometimes, I mean, a lot of times I say, "Do you have a sponsor or do you have accountability partner?" Practice telling them first. Pick up the phone, go to your 12-step group, talk to your accountability partner. Come, like, be honest with them first. Let them hear you. They're the ones who are going to give you the gold star for being honest. Your spouse ain't going to do that. But that way you've practiced it a little bit and you've let some of the shame out already. So then you can go to your spouse. The other thing is to make sure that the time that you share with your spouse is appropriate, not as you're walking out the door, or some stupid time, like where there's not enough time to process, but to really say, "Honey, I got to talk to you about something. uh, it's I have to be honest with you. Would now be a good time?" And kind of read the room a little bit to know when would be great. Don't do it when the kids are screaming and it's the middle of dinner. Find a time where it's safe and calm. Those are some thoughts.
I had one that shared that they got a bomb dropped on them at 10:30 at night before the person was leaving for a 2-week business trip internationally, and had to get up at 4:30 the next morning to do so. It was like kind of the drive by, told them something and then left. I love that you're talking about practicing, because yes, the inclination. So here's encouragement: do this, like, the freedom for you, like Troy was talking about. I want to live in my integrity regardless of the consequence. Yeah, there's consequences to our behaviors. In the moment you didn't disclose the slip, and now you're going to do that. I would like you to practice not using language like, well, but I completely forgot. You got to understand. If you start using, I got to understand, you're on really thin ice. No, no, she does not have to understand. They do not have to understand anything. I'm doing this. I need to talk to you. I need to tell you this, you know, and without being defensive, without explaining, but now I think it's fair to say, and here's what I'm doing for my recovery. This is what happened, and here's what I'm doing. I've scheduled an extra appointment with my therapist. I've already met with my sponsor. All of those things are like how I'm going to work towards not doing the same thing again. I did put that book in, Worthy of Your Trust. Stephen Arterburn is a CSAT trained therapist. I don't know Jason Martinkus,
He,
but yeah, that
yeah,
go ahead.
he's the guy in recovery. So he and the
Okay.
CSAT wrote it together. He was talking about his experiences as the betrayer, and what he had to do to restore the trust in his relationship.
Okay. Available on Amazon. So yeah, check it out. I have not read that one. So okay, next question. What are good complementary somatic practices and therapies to support attachment wounds? I'm the betrayed 12 weeks from discovery. I'm working with an APSAT and have a couples therapist. I attend seeking integrity groups online. Even before betrayal, I had serious betrayals and infidelity in previous relationships, a history of sexual assault, anxiety, perfectionism, and I don't attach easily. But when I do, I have a complete holdover in my terms of fearing loss. My partner is in a 12-week program, attends meetings, and is on a wait list for a CSAT.
So I love a lot of alternative things. Breath work is something that's really becoming more known. And there are a lot of breathwork practitioners that do things online. In fact, me and one of my EAPs are going to be doing a breathwork uh, course starting next. Is it next Wednesday or the Wednesday after that? Uh, that we're going to be doing based on the attachment wounds. So that I'll send that to Tammy. She can put that up there if that's the thing. But so that's one of them. Peter Levine in his somatic therapy. There are therapists that have been specifically trained in that. There's so looking at that, doing meditation, exercise is another way to do that. So part of that is you're identifying that you have some attachment wounds, you don't attach easily, and then when you do, you have fear of loss. So we the clinical term for that is disorganized attachment style. The other term for that is anxious avoidant, which that's me too. So there's an anxiety like I don't want to let you in. I'm afraid you're gonna hurt me, but then I finally cave in. I let you in, and then I'm really afraid I'm gonna lose you. So all of a sudden I'm panicking and like, don't leave me, and that freaks the other person out too. So understanding that that's a style that you've learned over the years to try and protect yourself. It doesn't mean that you're bad or good. It just like you are wanting to protect yourself in all the ways. So it's you may even want to like pull out one of the finding peace workbook and work through some of that and start talking about that. If you have your ABSAT and you're a couples therapist, that would be some ways you could take like the rejection wound and the abandonment wound and the betrayal wounds and all those and take those to your ABSAT and say, okay, look, where are these in my body? And maybe your ABSAT has some of that. EMDR is a somatic practice, as it were. It's we're stimulating both sides of your body. Meditation, those are some things that pop up at the top of my head. Um, you know, I'm not sure. There are this is a new thing that a lot of people are doing, the ketamine, um, that whole style thing. I don't have any experience with that, but there are therapists that are trained in that, and there are research. that's showing that some of those things are another way of dealing with trauma, I would recommend you do your research with that first and not go sign up some random person. Like, do your research with that. But there are some alternatives that are really coming to the forefront of how we deal with trauma in other ways besides traditional talk therapy.
I put the link into the Empowered Women's Retreat. We just had one, not last weekend, but the weekend before. And we implement breath work. And it's not like, I love the 478 breathing. This is very different. And yeah, it's,
Intense.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm actually signed up for a retreat for Awaken for in Phoenix in a couple of weeks. So anyway, I don't know how 6 weeks of breath work is, or I mean, 6 hours of breath work is going to go be, but I'm all in because it's just like the shift in people. And like one person shared, I won't share the details, but it was a very, like, it's very meaningful to the people that are, there's a number of us who are watching over and caretaking the people who are in this experience, because you can have very somatic energy moving through, and tears, and like it's just really interesting. I personally had a psychedelic experience when I did it a couple of retreats ago, and I like that. So but that's a very different thing. Lots of grief processing, etc. Separately at the retreat, we do psychoeducation, psychodrama, meditation, etc. But another one that is really useful is the anger work. And people go, well, I don't really have anger. And guess what? Like all
Mhm.
of this abandonment stuff that you have, there's anger. And people get it caught like in their chest or in their belly or wherever. But like I mean, it can be their throat where they're feeling like almost suffocated, like when you start to talk about it. And to have that be processed through. One participant was sharing, like, I honestly had a pain in her stomach, and we're like, that's because you have kept everything up here. You haven't felt that in a long time. And she had a realization that that was accurate for her. So the from Thursday when the women arrive, and it's it's difficult, and they're and they're like almost rigid in the to Saturday when they're laughing, they're softer, they're in their bodies. Like it's freaking amazing that in 48 hours there can be that much of a transformation. So we have another one, October 24th through 27th. I it's called the Empowered Women's Retreat. We're not talking about him. We're talking about what we need to do, for healing for the partners. And I am incredibly I have an incredible admiration for the women who are willing to do this, because it's really easy to go, oh, it's his problem, and there can be fear of stepping into the healing for the women. These are the brave women that choose to do that. They are empowered, and for those that are willing to heal for themselves, regardless of what he does or doesn't do. I mean, like it's a new little tribe for you. We limit it to 16 people, and we were full this last one, and we would welcome you in Scottsdale, Arizona in October. Okay, the next one. I found my husband's searches for how to safely have sex with herpes, which of course strongly indicated he was cheating or thinking about it. During this time, he explained he was thinking of separating due to marital discord for years and was merely looking into the future. For these few weeks, he maintained he was leaning toward separating. I was devastated. I admittedly am an anxious attachment type. Since then, it turns out he was cheating in real life for 17 years with prostitutes and AMPs, uh, affair married partners, I think. And once I discovered that, he did a 180 and is fully committed in therapy. He says he does not want to leave. The shift was sudden, and he can't explain that he wanted to leave are probably more painful than the cheating. And I can't understand how he could change his mind so quickly, nor do I trust that his feelings that he wants to say will persevere. I don't want to commit to reconciling if he will revert to wanting to separate after his emotions settle. I have to, Dr. Rob does this all the time. Come here, go away. Come here, go away. Like that's like a perfect example of like, well, I want to like go off and do all this stuff. Wait, you're thinking of leaving me? No, wait. So but oh, lots there, and I'm so sorry for your pain in all of this. And healthy boundaries for you would be like, what do you need to do to take care of him? I wouldn't believe any of his words. I'm glad he's engaging in therapy, but like this is a 24/7 issue. He's been cheating for 17 years that you know of. And like, yeah, this would be, you will want to see his actions to see that he is safe. But for you right now, taking care of you, that betrayed partner work group that I mentioned starts 9/4. That's healthy boundaries. Like, and we talk a lot about that in the Empowered Women's Retreat. Lots of internal boundaries, external boundaries, what you need to do, practicing those, the 4-part talking boundary, all of those things. So if you want tools to use to take care of you, we have them. But so much there, Troy. What do you think?
My heart breaks for you, first of all. So I'm sad with you. The When I read the first sentence where he's searching to have sex with herpes, you didn't specify this, and I don't need to know. But my first thought was, well, does he have herpes? And if so, um, have you been tested? And I have a client who has that, not because of himself, but because a partner gave it to him, a relationship partner, and that it comes and goes, and they figure it out. But so, but the fact that like your light bulbs are like, oh my gosh. So first of all, making sure that you're safe and that you've been tested and all those things. It also doesn't surprise me he got caught, right? So all of a sudden there's this, yes, I'm serious and all those things. Maybe that's sincere, maybe it's not. I don't know. We have at least 17 years of lying and covering up and hiding things that make me be really suspicious of anything he says. So I honor and validate your hesitancy to commit to reconciling. And the 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 phrase that I tell women is like, his behavior has to tell you things. His mouth words don't matter. So what is he doing to show that he really is committed? Words don't mean anything. So is he going to a therapist? Is he going to 12 step? Is he taking action to work on his recovery? Those are the kind of things that I would be wanting to see before I'd be willing to recommit to reconciling. Um, so, and I might not be willing to reconcile for a while, because I think guys can fake it for a little while, but it's not sustainable. Faking is not sustainable long term. So that's part of what I'd be looking for. Is like, okay, so great, but what I need to see what you're going to do. Show me your action plan. Show me what your plan is, and I need to see that you're doing it, because you just telling me doesn't mean anything. So that's really what comes up for me. Like Tammy said, I really hope that you can reach out to the drop-in groups that we have for the women. There's We Tonglen, which is, I believe, a free website for betrayed partners. It's also a place where you can get some support, and finding a therapist for yourself. This is devastating in so many different ways. It's like the earth has shaken and the ground has opened up and it swallowed you in. And I want you to feel loved and supported, and to know that it's okay that you don't trust him.
Some couples put the relationship in safe harbor, and I think that can be useful for both of you, and here's why. It's, I don't have to make a decision. I'm not saying I'm going to do this for the next year. I'm going to next 60 days. Great. it also takes the decision, should I stay or should I go, off the table for you. Like, you can concentrate on healing. And Troy mentioned lots of resources, and there are lots of people that are on a healing path, in Weetonglen and on our drop-in groups. And then there are some people, who are stuck. And so look for people who are choosing to move forward. I mentioned Eddie Caparucci, a bit ago in September. Oh, sorry. In September of last year, he this is one I do actually know. He quoted Gabor Mate: "What happened can't unhappen." And the trauma comes if we continue to hold on to that. So I'm not saying whitewash like all of the 17 years of all the stuff that has happened, and do get an STD test. 100%. I should have mentioned that too, but we recommend that. Even if guys say, "Oh, it was only porn," go get an STD test. Like, we get guys all the time that come to treatment only when there's a crisis. Like, yes, they were caught before or whatever, but now there's a crisis. And so, there is a window of time. I'm glad he's leaning into some recovery. I hope he's joined our Sex Addiction 101 work group that starts on Saturday. But he's been doing this a long time, so just stopping the behavior isn't, that's just, again, abstinence and not doing what you weren't supposed to be doing in the first place. So true recovery is a path and a journey. I did put the courses that Troy mentioned. I put those in the chat as well, for you. But your healing path, you can be on a healing path as a partner, even if he doesn't change. It's just, what do you need to do to hold the safety for you? So, and I do refer to this one too. Kristen Snowden did a webinar in May on should I stay or should I go? And it's like, I think it's just interesting. Troy was talking about journaling, and it's just journaling. There's 10 questions to consider. And I think it can be helpful of like, yeah, I really like this person. I don't like this has happened, but I still really like this person. And I do vision, moving forward. Okay, well, that's useful, information too. So there's a ton of resources. Also in May, Debbie Allen did a webinar with two partners. One chose to stay and one chose to leave, and it's just their journey. So it's useful information. Ultimately, this is your life, and the decisions you make need to be the right ones for you. So, but we've got lots of resources to help. Okay, so on that book, and I'm actually going to reach out to Steve and see about having him be a podcast guest, because I do know him. So just a comment: my betrayal trauma therapist suggested that I, as the betrayed partner, annotate the Worthy of Her Trust book to create a personalized template for my husband to have some ideas of what would be most meaningful and helpful. Brilliant idea, because like, partners go, well, I want him to be, to have empathy, and I'm like, tell me what that would look like. Give us the, like, you would do this, your face would look like that. Tell exactly what you would be looking for, to display empathy, because otherwise it's just like this concept of like, I have no clue what that even means, because they've got no practice with this. So what a gift for you to go, this would be helpful, oh, okay, and I know you shouldn't have to do that. And okay, but at the end of the day, what is the goal? If the goal is to be in a healthy relationship and move towards each other, give them a template. What a great idea.
Yeah. So both Worthy of Her Trust and Dr. Rob's Out of the Doghouse give some tangible things that you can do to rebuild trust. And so I love what the therapist is saying. So, because not every suggestion in those books works for every person.
No.
Not every partner wants some of those things, but they can say, well, that doesn't work for me, but this does. So I encourage the betrayed partners to read Out of the Doghouse, to read the Worthy of Her Trust book, because both of them really do lay out some practical things that you can do to restore trust in your relationship.
Okay, the next one. My husband, SAPA, recently told me that he will not be giving me a full therapeutic disclosure. This was something he promised for reconciliation. It's a need for me to move on with him, so we will be moving towards divorce. I'm having massive problems associating this with my own worth. Oh, like I am not worth the work for him. My mind knows differently, but I can't stop those overwhelming waves of feeling discarded. I have abandonment wounds from childhood also. Tips for calming these feelings. Oh,
So you're doing number one, I'm sad. I'm sad with you. You have been able to specify like that one of the things as these wounds are being hit, it's activating your core belief that I am not worthy. And we're adding on there, I'm not worthy of him doing the work, right? So part of that is you I just write that down and look at it as a sentence. I'm not worthy of love, belonging, honesty, reconciliation. And then you look at it and you say, um, okay, on a scale of 1 to 7, how true is that? How true, and not here, right? Your brain is going to tell you, well, that's not true. But from here, how true does it feel here? And then what are some of the evidences that you can have that suggest otherwise? So part of that is working through that. Hopefully you have a therapist that you are going to be able to work through. The truth is that it is a reflection of it's a reflection on how he feels about his own worth. I am not worth doing this work. I don't believe that I'm worth sacrificing and being vulnerable and open in order to be able to share what's going on with me. And therefore, I'm not willing to own that this is going to have any effect on other people. So it really is actually a reflection on him, but it's easy for me to say that. It's hard for you to believe that. And you already said it. Your mind knows that it's not true. So part of that is looking at, okay, so what were the boundaries that you set for that for you, and do you believe that you are worth truth, honesty, transparency? And if you're not going to get it, what does that mean for you? Not what does that mean as far as worth, but what does that mean for your future? Where do you get some support? So I just want to wrap you up in love and support, and let you know you are worthy of love and belonging and truth and all those things. Um, Noticing when those happen, doing some affirmations, doing some there's even, I'm not really familiar with that, but it's called emotional freedom technique, where you tapping, and like if you YouTube that, there's like a million videos on that stuff. But that's another way that people use to like ingrain positive core beliefs, and they're like, I'm worthy of love and belonging, even though he's not willing to um, do his full disclosure. That's a way to really like cement that, and then talk to women. I'm assuming you're a woman. um, Talk to women who are going to love on you and remind you that you're enough and all those things.
so we have women that come to the Empowered Women's Retreat that have been left. I also put the drop-in group from Moving On Alone. It's on Thursdays, and that's for women who have been left, or are in the process of leaving. And it is hard not to take this personally. And I'm here at 5,000 feet, and I'm going, wow, what brokenness in him that he's choosing his addiction, because that's what he's doing. He's choosing his addiction over real and meaningful connection. And unfortunately, and it doesn't matter what form of addiction it is, there's lots of addicts that continue to choose that. Their world is very small. It is. Dr. Rob uses, it's like in shades of gray rather than in technicolor. In recovery, we get technicolor. We get real life. We get, things that are really meaningful. But if you have your, focus down on like, I need to hang on to this, I need to hang on to this, it's so meaningless, and it's scary. And these are more words. This is not about you. I know where you're stuck, and I'm telling you, please, please come to the Empowered Women's Retreat. We will not only love on you, but we will help you, shift that feeling, that energy. We see it. So consider that. Okay. Few more questions. I'm separated from my domestic partner. of 5 years and we still see each other. Is unmarried sex considered losing my sobriety? Is there any difference in doing my work if I'm not married versus married versus unmarried?
So every 12-step program related to sex addiction has their own definition of what sobriety looks like. I am not the moral police, and I'm not here to tell you what you should and should not do. Um, so I can't define what your sobriety looks like for you. What I can say is if you are in a 12-step group and you have a sponsor, you and your sponsor can take a look at what that means for you. There are people that are not married and they do have sex, and that does not violate their sobriety as long as it's in a healthy, committed type of relationship. But again, I'm not here to tell you what your sobriety does or does not look like. The biggest question is taking a look at what's the motivation. Are you doing it as a way of numbing? Are you doing it as a way of trying to not deal with some things? Are you using it to connect in a healthy way? Like what's the purpose of that? So I know that's not a clear answer, but that it's I'm not the moral police. I can't tell you that, but it's a good question for you to answer for yourself.
Talk to your therapist, qualified professional, not just a general therapist. Talk to your sponsor. I like to me, I was reading this and I was like, if this is a friends with benefits, what is the goal, in the, in the connection, you know, if you're using it like you were using the acting out, that would be problematic to me. It isn't about the action. It's like if I'm using anything, if I'm going to my pantry and pulling food out, to stuff in my face because I'm feeling emotionally uncomfortable, guess what? That's a problem. So if you're reaching out to a partner going, I know I can hook up and I'll feel better afterwards, because like that would it to me, it's more the motivation. It's not about sex or food or whatever it is. It's about what am I seeking, with this. If I'm looking to calm myself down, I'm looking to use someone else, to make me feel better. That would be something to talk to my therapist and sponsor about. So the next one, I mentioned safe harbor, and great questions. Can you tell me more about what that is? Safe harbor is just putting the relationship in safe harbor means for the next 60 days or whatever. I don't think, people have said, oh, we need to wait a year. I'm like, that seems like a really long time. And guess what? An additive will wait. I'll wait till 11 months, 11 and a half months, or 11 months and 3/4, before I start doing something. And so this is like, for the next 60 days, I'm going to take that decision off the table. I'm going to be looking, I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to identify my healthy boundaries, but I'm also going to be looking at what the other, the betrayers, actions are, and are they doing something that will move them towards recovery? And then guess what? In 60 days, you can look at that and go, gosh, they're making progress. I see some hope, in all of this. So then I'm willing to re-up it at some point. It doesn't have to be, in safe harbor, but while things are kind of tenuous, it just takes that. I hear from partners, they appreciated not having that every day. Should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go? It was just like, I'm going to kind of sit back here and go, I'm going to see, what they're doing and how their actions are showing up. I think it's just helpful to take that pressure off of both in each of you, and kind of one of the ones we talked about earlier, where it's like, he's acting out because he's afraid I'm going to abandon him. If there's an identified period of time where we're going to see how this plays out. This is a new form of relationship for the two of us. So we want to see how we interact, with somebody showing up and looking to be accountable, that can be useful. So, okay. I am the betrayed 30. Oh, do you have time for one more?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm the betrayed 33 years married. I've been aware of pornography use over the years. It's been 5 years since the first discovery of possible escorts, and there have been another discovery of direct contact of an escort since. I have a therapist. He's in denial and minimizing, claims it's only curiosity. He's done nothing to get help. He says he isn't acting out now, but I have no reason to believe him. Because of our business, my involvement, and our son will be taking over the business. I have not left. I know he will shut down on me and make doing business difficult. My issue is I have started smoking again. I'm disappointed and embarrassed for allowing this to become a crutch after almost 20 years of not smoking. It seems impossible to quit with all the pressure of wanting to leave, and um, but the feeling I can't under the circumstances. I explain. I would appreciate your thoughts. Also, is it wrong for me to think something went on when he was never admitted to anything? Oh gosh, so much there. Thank you for sharing this.
Yeah, no, it's not wrong for you to think that something went on, even though he's not admitted it to it. Like, it's, I tell women all the time, you have a sixth sense. You all have some special gift of figure, like knowing something's not right, and we don't, we don't believe that. We think, and then we gaslight you, and then you get pissed when you find out that it was actually true. Your sixth sense was speaking. So believe in your sixth sense. Like it's real. Okay. So no, it's not wrong. I hear the challenge. Like it is a very challenging situation. When I was working in drug and alcohol rehab, I worked with men and women who were able to overcome meth, were able to overcome drinking, were able to overcome cocaine, heroin, and they, for the life of them, could not give up tobacco. It's its own special thing. So I'm sure that there's a lot of shame that's coming up for you that you've resorted back to that. Um, and first of all, there is no judgment. Like, I'm so proud of you that you were able to do it for 20 years. What that tells me is that you do have the capacity to do it again. But right now, smoking is something you can control when you feel like you have nothing else that you can control. So you found something you can control. And you think about it, you're smoking, you go outside, you're breathing, like you're taking deep breaths, it's calming and relaxing. So you may want to try just breathing and taking deep breaths without the tobacco. Um, but that is that is something to know. Like, that's something that you've learned that you can use. And I know there's so much shame around that. A lot of communities do have tobacco quitting programs that are free through the health department and those kind of things. So if that's something you want to take a look at, so that you can work through that, and get some support that way, I'd recommend you reach out there. Um, and I don't know how long you've been with us, but again, we've posted a ton of different chats in the chat. There's been a lot of different links that are available so that you can feel some support. You can have some other women love on you. Other women have been in similar situations where the situation with their husband is awful, but they can't leave for whatever one reason or another, and you're not alone. So check out the drop-in groups, the Weetonglen, the courses that we have, because you're not alone. And I believe that you will find sobriety again.
Yes, and I posted, the healthy boundaries, and it's physical. And again, no, we're not shaming you, about the smoking. I have a feeling if you can start going, wait, I'm the only person that can take care of me, and this is not good for me, you may start to shift it. But again, whatever you need to do right now. I personally go clean toilets when I'm highly stressed because that makes me feel better about, like, I can control this. It's ridiculous, but I actually do that. Um, uh, this is also complicated, and I'm working on having two webinars, during the September timeframe and September and October, that will be about, some legal and separating stuff. So stay tuned. I'm working on finalizing that. But we have lots of people who are actually, it's more complicated because there's also business. We had several people at this last Empowered Women's Retreat that it was not just our relationship, it was also the business relationship, and unpacking all of that. How do we, because it's a betrayal across everything. And how do we, yeah, how do we find safety and how do we move forward with all of that. So you're not alone. And like I said, I'm working on two different webinars. One will be the second week of September, and one will be the last week of October that will address some kind of legal aspects of that as well. So glad you're here. Thank you, Troy, and thanks for staying on a little bit late. Thanks for all the great questions. Come back again. Next week is Scott and me on the Wednesday, and then Dr. David will be the second week. Um, Eddie will be off. He's actually moving across states, and so he will be off. But I have a special edition for September, so check that out too. Thank you, Troy. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome. Good
Bye.
night. Bye.